Good evening, everyone. My name is Sierra Martinez, and I am the Senior Manager of Digital Marketing and Innovation with Blue Star Families. I'm honored to be here with you this evening, and I want to take some time to just thank the teams at AARP, the VFW, and the VBA for joining us tonight. Their continued support of our military community enables us to come together for meaningful conversations like this one. Tonight's session features some exceptional groups of panelists who are eager to share their insights and answer your questions. I encourage you to utilize the live chat feature to submit questions whenever you have them. And if you'd like to share where you're calling in from this evening, you can do so now. If our panelists are unable to address your questions, don't worry. The Blue Star Families team is here to respond directly or continue the conversation afterward in the Blue Star neighborhood. I also just want to take a quick minute to remind you about PII. Please refrain from sharing any personal identifying information in the chat. When asking your questions, keep them general and adhere to our community guidelines. With that, I'm excited to get started and introduce you to Juanita Jimenez-Soto, our facilitator for this evening and AARP's Manager of National Veterans and Military Families Programs. Thanks so much for being here tonight, Juanita. It's always great to see you, and we're so grateful for our partnership with AARP.
Well,
Please tell us a little bit about yourself.
sure. Thank you for having me. Of course, that's how excited I am. I just interrupted you. That's how excited I am. This is a great topic. AARP, we have 38 million members across the association, and 6 million of them are veterans, active duty. So this is information that would really benefit them. I'm the national manager of Veterans and Military Families at AARP, and we try to focus on what is relevant and impactful to our veterans. We're talking caregiving issues. We've talked about that before. We're talking about fraud prevention, talking about work and jobs and benefits, which is what we are going to be focusing on today with the VA rating and all the benefits that our veterans have earned. And I am not a veteran. My husband is a Navy veteran, and my son is an honors graduate of West Point and now a lieutenant in the Army. And I also have very proud of my nephew who just became, at the tender age of 29, a veteran himself of the U.S. Coast Guard. But I'm very excited to get this started. And like you said, our panelists are amazing. The knowledge that they bring to the table is going to prove to be very valuable to those who are tuning in and those who will be tuning in later. So without further ado, do you want to introduce our panelists, Sierra?
Sure. Tonight we have Jamie Statton from the VA. We have Mike Figlioli from the VFW and Tony Lowe from the VFW.
We can get started if you guys are okay with that, because I know there are a lot of folks out there that want to get the ball rolling. They want to hear what you have to say. So, Jamie, ladies and brilliance first. Sorry, guys. So, lead the way, Jamie.
Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you so much for your family member service and for your service as a military spouse and mother as well, because it's a lot. It's a whole picture for sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Jamie Statton. Today, I'll be helping you all to learn some things about a VA disability claim. Now, a little bit about me first. I have been with the VA for 18 years this month and with the government for over 20 now. I am also an Army veteran and a military spouse. I know the VA both inside and out. Just some notes. I have a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. There will be a lot of information, as this is typically a little bit longer presentation, so I'm condensing it and going to go pretty fast, but it is being recorded. We've also provided your group organizers with a copy of the slide deck that you can request from them following the briefing. Now, you'll notice on some of the slides that there are hyperlinks. That is for you to be able to access once the slides have been provided. Now, another reminder, as Sierra mentioned, don't put PII in the chat. Don't put your social security number in there. Don't put your individual claim info in there. I can't help you with your individual claim information in this forum, but I'm hoping to give you as much information as possible on everything else. So with that, if we want to share the slides, Megan. Okay, go ahead and go to the next one. Okay, so to help you understand your rating decision, we're going to go through some background on how we review and determine service connection and what that process looks like. Next slide. So we'll kick things off first by talking about some terminology. So for disability compensation, what most of you refer to as service connection. Disability compensation is a monthly tax-free benefit that's paid to veterans in recognition of the effects of disabilities, diseases, or injuries incurred in or aggravated during active military service. Next slide. When VA receives a claim for disability compensation, VA claims processors review the evidence to determine if the veteran's claimed condition was incurred in or aggravated in the line of duty during their military service. When VA finds a condition was caused by the veteran's service, service connection is granted for that condition, and it's then considered service connected. VA will then be able to compensate the veteran for that condition. Next slide. When VA grants service-connected disability compensation for a condition, the condition is assigned a percentage or a rating based on the severity level. Percentages can range from 0% to 100% for each service-connected disability. The percentage is based on how much it interferes with the veteran's employment or ability to function. Now, a 0% evaluation can be granted and is considered non-compensable, meaning that VA would not pay the veteran compensation for that condition, but the condition would still be service-connected, and that would entitle the veteran to other benefits like free health care at a VA medical center for that condition. Now, an important point here is that evaluations are determined by the law. They're also published. Anyone can review what symptoms result in what evaluations by looking up 38 Code of Federal Regulation, 38 CFR, or Part 4. So we call it the Code of Federal Regulations or the CFR, and you want to look for 38 CFR Part 4. It gives all of the information that we are bound to by law. Now, the veteran's compensation payment amount is based on percentages VA assigns. The veteran has more than one service-connected condition, VA adds up the different rating percentages using what's called a combined ratings table. We often hear it called VA math, and it often causes a little bit of heartburn with some folks, and I understand. The combined disabilities or combined percentages determine the amount of compensation that will be paid to the veteran for their service-connected disabilities each month. Now, an important note is that VA math is based on body systems, so the percentages don't add up directly. They're combined based on what body system is affected. So a 10% for, say, a hearing loss plus a 10% for a musculoskeletal condition will likely add up to 20%. But a 10% for an ankle and a 10% for a knee may not add up to 20%. It's all based on the law, again, in the combined ratings table. On this slide, you can see there is a link to the website showing the current rate of payment for disability compensation as well. You can even Google too and go to just the current VA rating table. And that will give you the amounts that are assigned for each percentage. And that is also published. So now let's go into some different ways VA can grant service connection and how the disability claims process itself works. Next slide. So for general eligibility criteria for disability compensation, a veteran may be eligible for service-connected disability compensation if they have a current diagnosed disability and they served honorably on active duty for training, or inactive duty for training if the injury was incurred during the line of duty. Now, disabilities can be physical conditions like a skin condition, or a knee strain, or mental conditions such as depression or PTSD. Next slide. So first we'll talk about direct service connection. Now that we've touched a little bit on what service-connected disability comp is in general. So This right here is the most important slide of the deck. I can't say it enough. These three things are the backbone of what we need to grant service connection. In order to grant service connection, these three things must be met. You have to have 1, a current diagnosed chronic disability, 2, an event, injury, or disease in service, and 3, something to link 1 and 2. So a link or a medical opinion, often called a nexus opinion, that establishes that the current disability is related to that in-service injury or event. Now, when VA receives a claim for service connection, claims processors review the evidence to determine if the claimed disability is related to an event during service. Service connection can be established in several different ways, meaning a condition might have been incurred during service, could have been aggravated by service, or the VA can presume that a post-service diagnosis is related to military service. These are considered different methods or theories of service connection. And every claim, we look at all possible theories or methods of service connection to be able to grant. Now, direct is the most basic form of service connection, and it's pretty straightforward. Direct service connection means the veteran's current condition resulted from an injury or illness incurred during service. So here's an example of direct service connection. Say a veteran claims service connection for a right ankle condition. VA reviews the evidence, finds the veteran was treated for a right ankle sprain during service on active duty. Currently, they have a diagnosis that's shown in medical evidence of right ankle arthritis. We'll request an exam to determine the current severity and get a medical opinion. If the examiner provides the opinion that that current right ankle arthritis was caused by or first manifested by that right ankle sprain in service, that's direct service connection and we'll grant. Next slide. Okay. Presumptive service connection is a special method of service connection. It's typically for disabilities that did not begin during active service, but instead began after discharge, and VA is presuming, thus presumptive, presuming that the diagnosis is related to some sort of exposure the veteran had during service. Presumptive conditions are identified based on medical research and are established by the law. Some examples of presumptive service connection include diseases that VA presumes are due to Agent Orange exposure during the Vietnam War. This could be type 2 diabetes. Presumptive conditions are also identified in the law for related to radiation exposure, asbestos exposure, and most recently burn pits during the Gulf War. So presumptions are used by VA to lessen the burden of proof on the veteran. So whereas before, establishing direct service connection, I said 3 elements had to be met. What were they? An in-service illness or injury, a current chronic diagnosed disability, and a link between 1 and 2. For presumptive service connection, the medical link serves as that number 3. The law serves as that number 3. The medical link is established by the law itself. So we don't have to have that opinion. So let me give you an example. A veteran with honorable service in the Army from 05 to 09 claims service connection for asthma. Service records confirm the veteran was deployed to Iraq, and medical records document a current diagnosis of chronic asthma that started in 2020. Now that there's no treatment for asthma in service, it was first diagnosed well after they were discharged. There's no evidence of an intercurrent issue like a big fire that the veteran was in that could negate that link. We can grant service connection for asthma on a presumptive basis. The veteran's exposure to burn pits and other toxic substances, including fine particulate matter, is conceded based on their service in Iraq during the Persian Gulf War, and they have a diagnosis of a qualifying presumptive disease associated with that exposure, which manifested at any time and to any degree after military service. That sounds like a lot of legal jargon, and that's because it is. Again, it's established by the law. We're bound by the law. So it's 38 Code of Regulations, Part 3, Section 320. Now, a special note here, a huge law for veterans was passed on August 10th of 2022. The Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson, honoring our promise to address Comprehensive Toxics Act, or the PACT Act, this law added new presumptive diseases for veterans exposed to toxic substances during service. It added a lot of conditions within certain time frames. I highly recommend you all look into it, especially if you or a loved one served in that time frame. You can go to www.va.gov/PACT, PACT, and that'll tell you all about it. Next slide. So if service connection cannot be granted on a direct or a presumptive basis, we will look for any other way that we can potentially grant service connection. We can look at secondary service connection, and we can look at aggravation. Secondary means the veteran has a disability resulting from or worsened by another primary service-connected condition. For example, veteran is already service-connected for left knee arthritis. They have now developed right knee arthritis. If the medical evidence and a medical opinion shows that the right knee arthritis resulted from overcompensating for the left knee arthritis, VA can look at granting secondary service connection, even though there's no mention in the service treatment records or during service of a right knee condition. We can still grant that based on a secondary basis if the opinion supports it. Now, aggravation is a little bit different. This is when a disability that existed prior to service was worsened by the veteran's military service. So when someone enters military service, they attend an enlistment exam where any pre-existing disabilities or defects should be noted. Now, I'm sure if you're a veteran, you remember duck walking around MEPS, right? I know I do. It was horrible. That is where the initial exam comes into place. And any conditions that are noted on the initial exam are considered pre-existing to service. Now, in cases where the claimed condition is noted on the enlistment exam, it is considered a pre-existing disability. VA can still consider whether or not that condition was aggravated by military service. If VA receives a claim for a pre-existing condition and the medical evidence shows treatment for or an increase in symptoms during service, we can request a medical opinion that asks whether or not that condition was at least as likely as not aggravated beyond its natural progression by the military service. And then we can grant. Again, a lot of legal jargon. It's identified under the law. We're again bound by the law. An example of this is a veteran is found to have minimal hearing loss on their entrance exam. The objective audiogram shows numbers that are consistent with a diagnosis of hearing loss. They go ahead and go into service. Their discharge examination shows moderate or severe hearing loss. That is a clear increase in that condition during service. So even though it presented and was there at the beginning of service, it was aggravated and we can potentially grant it. Next slide. I know this is a lot of information. Hang in there with me. We're getting there. This is how you can apply. We at VA truly want you to apply. If you're at all thinking of applying for service connection or think something that you have could be related to service, we highly encourage you to apply. We really want veterans and their family members to get all of the benefits that they have earned and deserve. Many of our VA claims processors are like me, we're veterans. We want to help. We want to get you there. We just have to, we're bound by the law, but we will do what we can to grant. I know as a rating specialist, I hated denying claims. So please go ahead and file those claims and let us take a look if you're thinking you may be entitled. This gives you different options for submitting claims for disability compensation. Filing is easy and free. We recommend veterans connect with trained professionals if you're worried or if you're nervous about filing. You can either file directly online, by mail, in person at one of our regional offices, or you can work with an accredited representative, such as the folks that are going to be talking here soon. Just make sure that they are accredited representatives. There are some folks out there that are taking advantage of veterans, and we don't want that to happen. Accredited representatives are bound and monitored by VA and stay within the guidelines to be able to help you without taking advantage. You can go to va.gov and search accredited representative. The page will come up. I've also given the presenters here some links that they'll provide you with the slide deck. There are a lot of accredited representatives out there that you can work with. We highly recommend that you just make sure that they're accredited. Next slide. Okay, so the next few slides, we're going to talk quickly about what happens once VA receives an application. What is the claims process? Step one is the application. When a service member or veteran submits their claim on a prescribed application form, we typically call it a 526EZ. On that form, they'll identify the specific disability or disabilities being claimed, and we'll also be asked to explain how it relates to service. Tell us why you think that condition is related to your service. You can upload handwritten documents. You can upload medical evidence. You can upload other supporting documents with your claim. Tell us, for example, is your condition due to exposure? Is it due to a motor vehicle accident you were in? Or maybe it was during PT, you injured your knee at a certain time frame. It doesn't have to be specific. Just get us started and help us to help you. Okay, next slide. Next is the development stage, and this is the stage where all of the work is completed to gather the information and evidence necessary to support the claim. So a claims processor will make sure that military service is verified. They'll obtain copies of service treatment records. They'll request any private medical records that are identified by you, and we may also request exams and opinions. Now, if the application's not clear, we may have to send a letter out to you asking you to help us clarify or help us understand something. And I do understand that our letters can be a little stressful. There's a lot of legal information in there that we're required to provide. And at certain points in development, we are required by the law to send a letter. This is where accredited representatives can be very helpful. Some letters will be asking you specifically for additional information. If you're confused or you're not sure what we need, work with an accredited representative or call our 1-800-MY-VA-411 phone number. Somebody from our call center will take a look at the letter that we sent you and tell you what it is that we need from you. Next slide. Now, an important part of the development stage is examinations and opinions. In cases where the medical evidence of record is not sufficient to decide the claim, VA may need to order an exam or an opinion to support that claim. The exam results will be recorded by an examiner on a Disability Benefits Questionnaire, or DBQ. This is a standardized form that closely aligns with the criteria used by VA. Remember, I told you it's all published. The criteria used by VA to assign evaluations for certain disabilities. After all relevant evidence is received, the claim then becomes ready for decision. Next slide. Now, this is just a quick piece of information. We can use acceptable clinical evidence exams. So if we have enough information within the claims folder itself, either by private treatment records or VA treatment records, we can potentially grant based on that. Those are called ACE exams. We also have the ability to use telehealth. And I know there may be some overseas veterans on the call. We can do exams for any overseas veterans. So again, if you're at least thinking at all that your condition's related to service, file the claim and let us try to help. Next slide. So next is rating. After all the development's complete, a different VA claims processor reviews all of the evidence and completes a rating decision. Now, this person is completely different than the person who did all of the development. So you get a fresh set of eyes looking at all of the evidence and all of the information. They will make a decision, and the rating decision will specify the issues that were addressed. They'll provide a summary of the evidence considered in the decision. They'll provide a summary of the laws and regulations that applied to the claim. They'll list any favorable findings made by the claims processor, and they'll identify what needed elements were not met if the issue was denied. We're bound by the law to put all of that information into our rating decisions and letters. That can make them a little bit difficult to understand. I do understand that, but we do our very best to balance the legal obligations that we have and trying to make the information as clear as possible. But if you're ever confused on what something means or what something says, either work with an accredited representative or give us a call at 1-800-MY-VA-411. They can see that rating decision, they can see the letter that was sent to you, and they can explain it to you. Next slide. Now, when service connection is granted for a disability, the evaluation or rating percentage is assigned based on the schedule for rating disabilities. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but just to review, the VA schedule for rating disabilities, or the VAS-D, is the regulation that guides claims processors to determine that the evaluation or percentage, and it's published again in 38 CFR Part 4. and it provides the criteria to use when assigning evaluation based on available medical evidence. And the percentages represent the average impairment in earning capacity, and the criteria is broken out by body system. Next slide. Now, the next stage is authorization. This is the final step. This is when yet another separate claims processor takes a look at the claim, the evidence, the rating decision, make sure everything lines up, make sure everything looks correct, and then validates that rating decision. And then they send that out to the representative and the veteran to inform them of the decisions made on their claim. Now, this letter will include the amount of compensation you'll receive, any other benefits you could be eligible for, and the notice letter also provides the veteran with information about what to do if you disagree with us. And I'll talk about that here in a minute. Next slide. Okay, a few quick things worth mentioning about disability compensation claims. Veterans can file multiple claims for multiple issues throughout their lifetime. There's no limitations on how many conditions it may be claimed or the number of claims a veteran can submit. There's no time frame restriction that mandates a claim has to be filed within a certain period of time after separation from service. And most importantly, you being granted does not mean that someone else cannot be granted. We see that a lot, especially with our older veteran population. They feel like they can't file for a claim because that means that somebody else won't get it. That's not how this works. If you think you have a condition that's related to service, file the claim and let us take a look. Next slide. Now, real quickly, if you disagree with our decision, the appeals process could be a whole nother presentation all by itself. But just to give you a quick overview, we do our best to make accurate decisions, but there's going to be times when people don't agree with us. It happens a lot. When that happens, we offer decision reviews, also known as appeals. There are 3 options or lanes available for decision reviews. A supplemental claim allows the claimant to submit additional evidence to support their claim. So that's where you're having somebody else take a look at it and you're providing additional evidence. A higher level review means somebody at a higher level than the rating specialist who rated your claim is going to take a look at it, but they can only look at the evidence that was in the claims folder at the time of the decision. They can't look at anything new. And then finally, the board appeal option allows the claimant to request a review of the decision by a veterans law judge at the Board of Veterans Appeals in Washington, D.C. These do take a little bit longer, but they allow for a judge who's an expert in veterans law to review the case. Next slide. Here's a couple other little benefits that I wanted to throw in case we have any of our overseas veterans online. We've got for CONUS and OCONUS, we have education benefits, pension benefits, adapted housing. We have a lot of other veteran-related benefits. If you're not sure or there's something you're looking for, make sure you go to va.gov and take a look. Or you can, again, call our 1-800 number, 1-800-MY-VA-411, and talk to a claims specialist or a call center representative to ask any questions that you may have. Next slide. And here's some more. Like I said, there's hyperlinks. Once you get your copy of the slide deck, you can certainly check out all of those resources, or you can just go to va.gov and all of those will be listed in there. You can just search by the titles. Next slide. I think that's it, right? Yep. So hopefully I have covered a lot of information. I have also provided our most recent VBA resource guide to the folks putting on this presentation, and they can provide it to you following the presentation. So with that, I will hand it over.
Jamie, like you said, a lot of great and valuable information, and we will be sharing that with you, our audience, so that you can have it at the ready. I can tell you that I was jotting down a couple of things myself because so much out there that we just don't know about, and you don't know what you don't know, right? So I applaud you for being with us and giving us an overview of all of this. Plus, you're going to be sticking around. So guys, if you have your question, get it ready, because Jamie will be sticking around right now. We are going to hear from one of my favorite organizations, veterans. They're all my favorite, honestly. Any organization that serves our veterans, but the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Mike Figlioli, he's the Director of National Veteran Services. And I know that Jamie touched on VSOs a little bit, and VSOs, actually, they make up the veterans of foreign wars. They have a lot on their amazing team. So, Mike, take it away.
Hi, thank you, Juanita. Thank you, everyone. First off, thank you, everybody, for your service, whether it is a spouse or a family member you serve to. And VFW is certainly happy to advocate for family members as well. Thank you, Jamie, for that very in-depth briefing. I think a lot of the things you explained were spot on, very basic things you need for service connection, and then touching on what VSOs provide. Happy to be coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. We are in town celebrating our 126th National Convention. We were founded in 1899, so we're finishing up our 125th year and moving on to number 126. Interestingly enough, Columbus is where the organization began, in a tailor shop not too far from the hotel that I'm sitting in at the moment, all those years ago. And look how far we've come in 125 years. We've got 1.4 million members to include our auxiliary. Our Kansas City office is our headquarters. We do a lot of advocacy out of our DC office. And I think Jamie kind of touched on it earlier about accredited help as far as filing a claim. I think you've probably heard a lot of organizations, a lot of VSOs talk about claim sharks, which are unaccredited bad actors who are really people that are just trying to separate you from your hard-earned benefits, whether it's you or your family member. One of the things we like to say is if the representative you're dealing with is not an accredited claims agent or an accredited attorney and doesn't put a power of attorney, a VA Form 21-22 in front of you, then you need to run. That's what gives us the authorization, the access to look at your VA claim folder, which Jamie had mentioned, where we can see the same things that the VA sees almost to 100%. There are some things we can't always see, but we get a pretty good look at the entire file. We were able to do a full review. And one of the things we're really happy to be able to talk about is to say that we don't charge for that service. It's free. And if you are given an award or a family member is given an award, no matter how large that award is, none of that money goes to an accredited representative. It doesn't go to the organization like ourselves at the American Legion, the DAV. It can't. We legally can't charge by law. So if you are granted $100,000, you get to keep that full $100,000, and you've got the power of the organization behind you. VA accredited, fully trained. We're not volunteers. We are professional staff members, and we are able to guide you through that process. Explain those letters that Jamie talked about that can be confusing. Had the opportunity last year to work with Congress and Congressman Luttrell's office to try to work to simplify the language in those letters, because they can be full of legalese and hard to understand. So our staff can get you through that. Claim sharks will promise you an easy path to service connection. Jamie laid it out for you, the 3 things you need. You've always got to have them, but they've got to be legal. You can't have made up fraudulent documents. You can't pay somebody to do your claim and then be sent to their examiners, their doctors, who are going to write a medical opinion that's not legal, that's not accurate, that's not fraudulent. They submit their claims at the same places that we submit our claim. But they all go to the VA. They go to Jamie's team in the VBA, the Veterans Benefits Administration. You'll hear about a fully developed claim. What does that mean? That just means that all the evidence is up front and it's available for being rated correctly the first time. They don't have to do much development, or if any. But it's, again, through a contracted VA examiner, and it's got the backing of the VA behind it, as well as us with our accreditation. You go to some of these bad actors, they're happy to tell you that they'll get you 100%. If you're only 50 or 60%, they're going to get you there. But remember, their name isn't on the application. It's you or your family member. So you're the one that's going to be liable. You're the one that's going to be looked at should something be found to be fraudulent. The claim shark gets to go away. They get to keep the $50,000, $60,000 they may extort from you, and then suddenly it's you that's it's on the hook and risk jail time, fines. Just like we as accredited representatives, we also are subject to penalties, jail time, fines if we violate 38 CFR Part 3 or Part 4, which Jamie talked about earlier. So there's some accountability. So please do your research. As Jamie said, if the representative you're talking to is not accredited, that's a big term. That needs to be looked at. If they're not accredited, I would rather you to stay away from them. If you want to come with VFW, would love that. But let an accredited, professionally trained representative help you through your process. I talked about being trained and not volunteers. VA requires that we go through 40 hours of training a year. We do 80. We hold several training sessions every year to make sure that everybody's up to speed, especially when the PACT Act came on board. That was such a vast change to veterans law that we had to make sure that everybody knew how to apply the law, how to get those benefits that those veterans have achieved or their family members. And we took a little time and put a lot of time and effort into it. One of the things we're proud of, before people separate from the service, we have representatives on more than 20 bases across the country. They're called BDD, or Benefits Delivery and Discharge claims. So that way we are able to help you start the process before you separate from service. There are some nuances to it. There's some time frames. You have to be 180 days from your ETS date. You can get the claim started then. If you're 60 or less, it has a little bit different of a classification. Your exams might be a little later, but the intent is to get you those benefits. We know the first year of separation from military service is when a veteran is most at risk for suicide. That's really something that we want to focus on, make sure that that safety net of potential income is in place, medical care through the Veterans Health Administration, housing through the home loan guarantee. Those are all important things that we want to make sure that that veteran or their family member has in place. Job training, JT, VR&E, those are all things that we can help you through. So we always ask that you would, again, look for an accredited rep. Make sure that any contract you sign is legal, because there are accredited agents and there are accredited attorneys and accredited claims agents. So please make sure you do your research and your due diligence for that. We have 2,400 VFW accredited representatives across the United States. We are soon to expand to Korea here later on this year. We just got the authorization to hire for that position, so we were able to help there. But we've also helped veterans and family members from Europe, from Guantanamo Bay, all over the world. We have a whole team that's ready in place. So if you go to vfw.org/claims or NVS, that information will come up, and we're happy to link with you and put you in touch with an accredited rep. Last year we recovered $14.6 billion for the 600,000 plus veterans and family members we represent, and every dime went to the veteran. So Juanita, with that, I'm happy to yield back, and I know we're probably getting a little short on time, so if there's some questions, I'm happy to take what we can.
Wow. I mean, I'm just blown away by the amount that you just mentioned that went back to our veterans. That's amazing. And I know that a lot of the folks on listening to this are just wondering, how do you get this? I know that the whole transition, there's supposed to be someone there to help them to get their VA rating, their initial VA rating. How easy is that process? Is it hard, and what documents do you need to take with you?
No, it's not really that difficult. We have a checklist on our website, on our National Veteran Service website, vfw.org/NVS or /BDD. We'll tell you what you need, but you need your military records, you need your documentation of dependents, you need the Social Security numbers. Jamie talked about the application needs to be filled out. You need birth certificates and those things to put in that packet, which generally makes up what I think Jamie would agree we call a fully developed claim if everything's up front. And I think Jamie can touch on this a little bit more. We'll help you get that filed. We'll show you how to get your records. But remember, the VA is responsible for getting federal records. If you have records that would point to a disability that you need additional evidence for that are on the economy or private providers, there's another form that you got to fill out. VA will send that to their private provider, and then they need to respond to that. And then it all gets wrapped up in one package, and it gets forwarded. Everything's electronic these days. When I first started in this business years ago, and I think probably when Jamie was talking about it, everything was paper. Big volumes of records and all. But now anywhere that there's a digital internet connection, we can help you file a claim. We have a claims management system that is enterprise-wide. So if you start a claim on the East Coast and you move to the West Coast, the person that picks up the claim for the VFW is able to see all the same evidence that's there, just like the VA uses. So, and again, we have access to the VA system because we are all accredited. We all have a credential that would get us into that system. So we work hand in hand with Jamie's team in the VBA. We're kind of a force multiplier. If they say that they need to do development, they let your representative know, whether it's us or another accredited rep, and then we work with you to put that packet together and get it turned in. Now, there's also a number of deadlines, right? There's 60 days for this and 30 days for that, but that's it. If you got to, don't worry if you don't have a full copy of your medical records, right? I think Jamie can talk more to this in a second. VA has to get them. You get birth certificates, you need to have those. If you're divorced, get your divorce decree. If you need social security cards, make sure you know all those things. So everything goes into one packet, it gets submitted, gives the VA the best opportunity to make their decision right the first time, because you don't want to have to go back several times and add things that you may have missed the first time, or you didn't put enough information into the packet and VA has to develop for those things. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jamie for.
Yeah, Jamie, I mean, Mike set you up perfect. Having all these documents and having them ready to go, it's key, right?
It is. He did tee me up pretty well for sure. Yes, like I said, kind of during my presentation, help us to help you. We want to grant. There's nothing more that a rating specialist hates than getting to the end of all of that work and not being able to find a way to grant. I did it for years. I can assure you that really is the case. Whatever you have, we will absolutely get your service treatment records. We have processes in place for obtaining those records. If you've seen all of the EHRM news these days, we're working on a system where we can automatically access DOD's records. We have a little bit of that in place now with a system called JLV, where we can go through that portal and be able to see your Department of Defense service treatment records in real time right away without even having to ask for them. So yes, absolutely, we will get those records. Transition is a whole nother space. If you want to file a claim before you get out of the service, we have lots of avenues for that. And we work directly with Department of Defense so that they are actually going to have representatives that work directly with the transitioning service member to go through med boards or go through the disability process. They're now required to go through the TAP course, the Transition Assistance Program courses, which they did not have when I got out. They basically kicked me out and said, here you go, have a nice life, here's your 214, good luck. That is not the case anymore. They are mandated to take these TAP classes before they get out. There's a lot of pressure from Congress on commanders to ensure that veterans are taking, or that service members are taking these courses before they discharge. It gives them all of the information that they need before they get out. So it's a whole different world these days. We really do try to help with that transition as much as we can.
You're right. I mean, it's a whole different world. If let's say I served and I served in the 80s and I can't find my records, are those going to be digital as well, or who do I go to?
Yeah, if they're during service, if you're talking in-service treatment records, yes, they will be there all digitized. We will be able to see them through our VBMS system. We'll be able to identify them. If you can give us a date range, even if it's general, like it was 85 to 86, if it was the first year I was in, if it was, just give us some kind of a ballpark to be able to start looking. That will help us narrow the field a little bit, because a lot of folks have a lot of records. So anything you can do to help us out with that, we can definitely do, but we will get any of those. Now, if it's private treatment records, so if you got out and you went to your family care doc in middle of nowhere, Oklahoma, we'll go get those, or we'll go ask for them, but you have to give us a release of information and tell us that they're there. So private treatment records, will do our best. But some providers are not, they don't keep them that long. So if it's more than a few years, they may have destroyed them. But VA, that is not the case. Department of Defense does not destroy any records. We did have the fire, which is a whole different ball of wax back in the day, but we have processes in place even to help with those type of records. And we do have some records from that time frame. So don't let that be a detriment to you trying to file a claim.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, Jamie, sorry, Juanita. Jamie, just to jump in. I think we've both experienced this, where some people think that their medical records are theirs and they're in the garage somewhere. And that sometimes is why they can't find your medical records, because you may have your originals put up somewhere that need to go to the VA, which would help Jamie and her team adjudicate your claim. So if you have your original medical records, please turn them in with your claim. And if you have a copy, whether it's hard copy or digital, we can assist you in getting that turned in as well, because again, it's the more evidence up front, the better. The more developed that the claim is, the quicker VA can grant it. And as Jamie said, if there are certain things that are lost due to the fire, everything's been digitized. VA spent the last few years, I think they finished it right after COVID, that everybody's records are now digital. If you turn them in, if they're in your garage, they're not in there. All right. So make sure you turn them in.
I gotcha. And when it comes, for VA accredited VSOs, do they only work on cases of disability compensation and VRNE, or can anyone get, access to an accredited VSO, get their help on other things like filling out forms for VA life, insurance, GI Bill paperwork, and maybe other similar type documents?
Yeah, we're happy to do that. We're not just trained in compensation and pension issues. We have to know a little bit about everything. We have to know about the GI Bill, VRNE, life insurance, home loan guarantee. We even stress that our reps learn a little bit about the local and state benefits that are available once you get your rating, because every state's different. There are free hunting and fishing licenses if you're a certain percentage. A lot of states give a property tax break based on your disability. So we can help. We can help with all that. We like to say that we're from the cradle to the grave, right? When you sign with a VSO, when I say sign, when you fill out a power of attorney, we're not signing a contract. It's just a limited power of attorney that lets us look at your VA claim and look at your VA records. And until you sign a different power of attorney or decease, generally we're with you from cradle to the grave. So if you signed a power of attorney back years ago with American Legion, VFW, DAV, and you never filled out another one, they're likely still your representative of record. Now you may have to catch up and fill out a new one because they've updated the form, but they're still your representative on file. People forget sometimes. Time passes, they don't realize that they started with DAV in 1971, and then they think that they don't have a rep, but they may still have one. So we can help with disability pension, VRNE, GI Bill, home loan. We can do it.
Accredited representatives can even help with discharge information, because there's a lot of confusion. We get a lot of questions about discharge upgrades. That's not VA. If you're discharged, whatever's on your DD 214 is owned by the Department of Defense. And so if you want to try to work to upgrade your discharge, accredited representatives can help you with that, because you actually have to go through DOD into your branch. It's not VA.
Gotcha. So we talked about ratings. Do they change over time? They do, right? I mean, do they change over time? And then what if you didn't get, you didn't receive a rating, and will you still be eligible for those benefits?
Absolutely. One of the things I mentioned at the end is there's no time frame, there's no time limit. Now, granted, I will admit that the further you get away from your discharge date, the harder it is to prove that link. But we will do everything that we can to help you. And yes, absolutely, file those claims. Conditions can get worse. We see that a lot. You can file a claim for increase. The process is the same. You submit the claim. You submit any evidence that you have with that claim that's showing that condition has gotten worse. Like say I talked to my VA primary care doctor in March of this year, and he said it's way worse. Tell us that. Or I went to my private treatment provider. Now, community care records, we do get those. But if you can get copies of them and submit them with your claim, that may speed things up a little bit. Because sometimes we have to wait for the community care provider to provide them to VA, your VA doctor to look at them, and then they put them into the system. So it may take a little bit more time, but if you get a copy of them when you check out that day, you can submit those with your claim as well. But if you have a condition that has gotten worse, absolutely file a claim for increase and let us take a look at it again.
What if you have, let's say, disability or some kind of injury to different parts of your body? Do you file a claim per injury, or can you do it all together?
You can put as many conditions on one application as you want. I once rated a case with 127 contentions. Each individually listed out every finger, every toe, everything under the sun. So if you think your condition is related to service, now, again, you need those three things, right? You need a current chronic diagnosed disability, an in-service event, and a link between the two. So focus on those three things when you're filing your claim. And whatever you want to file, you can claim it. We'll look at anything and everything, and hopefully be able to grant service connection for you. If not, we'll tell you what we're missing.
So one of the questions we got was, the VA, can get these records for folks, but how can they request them themselves? I know they can go through VA, and the VSO can help with that too.
Well, it's a couple of ways. I think you can do a FOIA request, which I wouldn't suggest because that takes a long time. But if you go to the National Archive record section, NARA.gov, .gov. If you look at the top of the screen, there's a number of buttons, and I think number 2 says request veteran records. Click on it, fill out the information, sign it, fax it in. If you're the veteran, not a problem. And then if you are next of kin because you need it for death benefits or whatever, you mark that as well. And then they will send those records to the next of kin that requests them. So that's probably the easiest and quickest way. If it's time of need, but we have this happen quite a bit, especially with older veterans. People never ever seem to know where the 214 is when a veteran passes. Very few times. And yes, the funeral home can assist you with that. But if you go to NARA.gov, fill out the record, tell them it's needed for time of death for benefits, they usually expedite it and get it to you. That's the best way to do it.
So does that, I'm real quick, does that form have a name? Because you know everything.
Oh yeah, it's an electronic SF-180. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yep, standard form 180. I forgot about that. Thank you.
Another quick thing I was going to mention is a lot of the older veteran population that I've worked with, I don't need to file a claim. I don't need service connection. I've got my own insurance. VA doesn't have anything for me, on and on and on and on. Another thing, we want you to file a claim. We want you to try to get that service connected. If a veteran passes away from a service connected condition, their spouse can be entitled to benefits as well. So if you want to look at somebody other than yourself, if you don't want to do it for you and don't want to deal with the problems with filing a claim and all of that for you, consider that it could result in benefits for your spouse as well. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind.
So one of the questions we received is, if you're a service-connected veteran and received a letter saying that you were in the area for the PACT Act, do you need to file additional forms? And what are they?
Mike, I'll let you go first, and then I'll come in behind you.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. I think the question needs a little bit more form to it. I mean, if you believe that you have a diagnosis of something that's covered by the PACT Act, I think Jamie said earlier, just put it on the 526EZ and send it in. You don't have to use exact terminology. Don't waste your time looking into the 38 CFR Part 3 or Part 4 for the diagnostic code or anything else. VA is going to take care of that. If you have trouble coughing, write down, I have trouble coughing, trouble breathing. The VA will find out where you were. There's an exposure letter that is being sent out by DOD that should be associated with your file by now that says you were in certain areas. VA will do that development. If they need anything else, they will ask you. And I hope that starts to answer your question. If not, I'm happy to take a clarification. I think Jamie can help.
Yeah, I could touch on a little bit too. We did a huge campaign around PACT Act. VA sent out a ton of letters to pretty much anybody who could potentially be entitled to more benefits based on the PACT Act. Because like I said, we want to get you your benefits that you're entitled to. So we sent out hundreds of letters across the nation. One thing that I will tell you, go ahead and get the screening. VA is doing healthcare screenings on the VHA side, the Veterans Healthcare Administration side of the house. They're doing screenings for conditions that could be related to PACT Act. Get that screening done, because even if you don't have a condition that's under the PACT Act now, we're looking at new things. We just added 3 more cancers that came after the PACT Act was established about a year later. We're looking at all of the different things that are coming about from different exposures during service and different exposures to burn pits and other chemicals. So we will reach out, and once you've got that screening in place and you're in with the VA healthcare system, we'll send you the information if that information changes and we start granting more benefits. So even if you're not sure now, go ahead and get that screening in and get that on the books.
So go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got a question related to that. I just want to make a comment about something I put in the chat earlier before we separate.
So I was just going to ask because, you know, Alicia is asking, what if you are active duty? Is it still the SF 180? You know, will it be an electronic form?
SF 180, if you need your records once you separate, yes. If you're still in active duty, the branch needs to give you a copy of your records before you separate. So it sounds like a little bit of pre-discharge going on here. And I think, thank you for the segue, because that's kind of what I was going to lead to. I put in the chat, file your claim before you're out 1 year, right? If you separate on January 1st, you have until December 31st to fill your claim out, and it will go all the way back to January 1st. But if you get to day 366 after your separation, it's from that date forward. You can lose an entire year. So it's very important that you go in to see your doctor, get things documented, start compiling your records. DOD will give you a copy of your record, as Jamie said, using JLV or Joint Legacy Viewer. We can use those records and the rest of it. So don't lose that time. Lose out on that time. I've had people do that and they've lost a whole year of retroactive benefits. But the government on active duty has to give you that copy, DOD. Once you're out, then it's the National Archive.
So the last question here, and you know, we're human. Humans make mistakes. So how can someone correct an error or discrepancy with their rating? And it's the last question. I'm sorry, guys. Go ahead.
Sure. So if it's within the appeal period and there's something that you disagree with, you can file those 3 layers of appeals. You can go to va.gov and search appeals. It'll give you some information on the different appeals options, or work with one of the accredited representatives to appeal. If it's something that's incorrect, like your dates of service, sometimes, especially National Guard folks, we may miss an active duty period. We think we've got all 12 periods of active duty in a 20-year career, but we may have missed somewhere where somebody, you know, was activated and went overseas, or was active duty under the National Guard for a certain period of time. So if there's something that's missing within a year of the decision, you can still file an appeal. If there's something that you feel is completely wrong, you know, give us a call at the 1-800-MY-VA-411, and they can advise you on what you can do depending on what the specific situations are. I also saw a quick question on Camp Lejeune. If it's not a condition that's related to Camp Lejeune water contamination, or you weren't at Camp Lejeune during the dates, then it wouldn't be required for us to address Camp Lejeune water exposure in the rating. If you think that what you have going on is due to that water exposure, you can file a claim for that. It's a whole different type of disability. It involves some, there's disability presumptives that we can do, but it also involves a court case. And so it gets a little bit more specific. To get in the weeds of that here, we'd be here for another hour and a half. But if you think it's some kind of exposure, go ahead and file the claim. Let us take a look at it. If we can't grant it, we'll explain why. If it's not something that's related to the water exposure, then, you know, it wouldn't be in there. But if you want us to look at that, put that in your claim. Say that I think that my stomach condition is due to the water exposure that I had at Camp Lejeune, and we'll look at that. I also saw a quick question on if there's a cap on Agent Orange cases. There is no cap on presumptive conditions. VA will grant as many as we can grant, because we really and truly want to make sure everybody's getting the benefits they're entitled to.
All right, well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have, but I just want to remind you that we are, you know, continuing the conversation in the neighborhood. Hopefully, you know, you can hop on in there and ask your question and it will be answered. Fingers crossed, more than likely it will. Mike Figlioli, didn't I tell you I was going to mess up your last name? So sorry.
You're okay. You got it right the first time.
Yes, I did. So I get credit for that, right? With Veterans of Foreign Wars, he's the Director of National Veteran Services. Thank you for joining us. Jamie Statton, I did not mess up your last name, Senior Management and Program Analyst, Office of Policy and Oversight, Veterans Benefits Administration. A lot of great information. Sierra, oh my goodness, I was taking notes because it's just so much information out there. And I just want to say this has been one of the best live webinars that we have done. So much info, relevant information, and people are saying thank you for answering their questions. Can you imagine? Oh my goodness. Thank you, Sierra.
I know. I feel like we could easily be here for 60 more minutes, but probably closer to 4 hours. I really appreciate you, Jamie and Mike, taking the time tonight. Juanita, your facilitation is always incredible. Members, thank you for being with us tonight. You are why we do these things, and the conversation will continue within the neighborhood. And we will also send a follow-up email that will include the PowerPoint that was shared this evening, tons of the resource links that were shared, and of course the presentation itself. If you have questions that weren't answered, please know we have them. We will be sharing them with Jamie and Mike, and we will get you answers in the coming week. So thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, Juanita. Thank you, AARP, VFW, VA. We appreciate you all, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.